And we're back with an all new episode of News You Can Use, a podcast by Pennsylvania Stands Up about Pennsylvania, people, power, and politics. I'm your host, Edwin, and I go by he, they pronouns, and I'm Director of Narrative Strategy here at PA Stands Up.
And I'm Hannah. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm the digital organizer here at PA Stands Up.
And before we get started, I just want to say Happy Pride Month, y'all!
Hi, gay! Happy Pride! In this month's episode, Edwin and I will take you through some Pride Month history, our current political moment, and then later we'll hear from our new coworker and queer organizing icon in NEPA, Alec Walker-Serrano, to talk about all things Pride and organizing as queer folks.
We have the honor that Pride is both a protest and a celebration. June is a great time for our community to come together, celebrate who we are, the progress that we've made, and continue to fight for the rights that we've always deserved.
Not everybody knows the history of Pride, and it's important that we remember and honor the folks who started and led this movement, trans women of color and Black lesbians like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Miss Major Griffin Gracie, Stormy DeLarvery, and more. Now, let's take a minute to talk about where it all started. Pride Month happens in June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Rebellion in New York City. This was a major turning point in the queer rights movement. Back then, being queer was a criminal offense. Queer relationships weren't legalized in New York until 1980. And because of that, most queer spaces had to operate underground. A lot of the queer-friendly bars didn't have liquor licenses, and that made them easy targets for police raids and harassment. The Stonewall Inn was one of the few places that welcomed queer folks, and it was owned by the mafia. It catered to the most marginalized in the community: drag queens, young trans people, unhoused youth, and queer folks just trying to survive. It wasn't safe, but it was the spot.
Police raids were common, and Stonewall was getting raided almost monthly. They had already been hit once that week. But on June 28th, 1969, things escalated. When police raided the bar again, the community fought back. The protest lasted 6 days. People were angry, they were fed up, and together they resisted. Those nights sparked something big. In the weeks that followed, organizers in New York started building networks and forming groups. They created newsletters and launched strategic actions. They demanded change, publicly, loud, and together. A year later, the first Pride marches took place in New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco to mark the anniversary of the uprising. What began as a protest grew into a movement and eventually a celebration.
And despite what it looks like today, we can't forget Pride didn't start as a party. It started as a riot led by queer and trans people of color. It was born out of survival, resistance, and a fight for dignity. And while we've made great strides since then, the fight is far from over. Here in Pennsylvania, some protections for queer folks do exist, but they're patchy and they're often local. Some cities and counties have passed non-discrimination ordinances to protect queer folks in employment, housing, and public life. More proof of how important local elections are, in case you needed the reminder from us. But statewide, we still don't have a comprehensive law that bans discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. As it currently stands, I could be fired from this job just for being queer.
Indeed, and we'd also be kicked out of our homes. But the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act is a good start. The Commission issues new regulations to cover things like education, public spaces, housing, and employment as of 2023, but it doesn't go far enough. We need these protections added to the law itself to protect each other, regardless of who the governor is. That's why the Fairness Act is so important. It would give LGBTQIA Pennsylvanians full protection under the law in housing, public accommodations, and jobs.
The Fairness Act passed in the State House on May 2nd, but now it's sitting in the Labor and Industry Committee in the State Senate. So, how do we get our senators to support this act and get it to the floor to vote? We need to get into my favorite hobby, calling and emailing them. In the show notes, we're going to include a link to the members of the PA Senate Labor and Industry Committee, so it's not just me annoying them. Go ahead and give them all a call and an email for me. That means you allies. Hello. While we're here, let's just go ahead and list the senators on the Labor and Industry Committee by name. The chair is Senator Devlin Robinson. The minority chair is Senator John Kane. Other members include Senators Bartolotta, Ward, Baker, Brown, Laughlin, Picozzi, Flynn, Pisciotano, and Tartaglione. And sorry if I mispronounced any last names, but we are going to be calling and emailing you.
Exactly. And we'll get better as we get to know you, so we'll be able to actually pronounce your name. Um, but we do have some protections. PA allows people to legally change their name and gender markers on their driver's licenses, and in most cases, on their birth certificates. Clearly, we have some work to do.
That's for sure. If you haven't heard, SB 9 is back. It's a cruel, trans exclusionary bill that would ban trans girls from participating in school sports.
SB 9 would block transgender girls and women from joining any team labeled girls, women, or female in K through 9 and college sports. It's a recycled version of HB 972, a bill Governor Tom Wolf already vetoed in 2022. Instead of addressing real issues in school sponsored sports like the lack of equal resources for girls, this bill scapegoats trans kids and adds fuel to a national fire targeting our most vulnerable youth.
The consequences of SB 9 would be devastating. This bill would hurt the mental health and safety of all young Pennsylvanians. If this bill passes, any girl, whether they're cis or trans, could be subject to traumatic physical examinations that would violate their privacy and bodily autonomy. These are children we're talking about. Not only that, but elected officials are targeting trans youth, a small and vulnerable community that's already at an increased risk of depression, anxiety, and suicide. This bill doesn't just ban trans girls from sports, it erases trans and intersex identities by stating that sex is defined solely by external reproductive organs and sex assigned at birth.
So, what can we do? You know the drill. Call your reps, write your reps, be kind to their staff, of course, but put the pressure on to keep calling and emailing. It may not feel huge, but when enough of us speak, they can't ignore us all. As constituents, we have power, and collective pressure works. That's why you have to help, too. And yes, I mean you. Because what does pride mean? Pride means community, and community means nobody gets left behind.
And that's what Pride is really about, recognizing that all liberation is intersectional. To me, queerness means actively participating and choosing each other and fighting for that liberation. It means standing with our trans friends, with our immigrant friends, with our BIPOC friends, and not allowing them to be scapegoated for political gain because of who they are. When they come for one group of working people, they come for all of us. Pride is about both remembering that our rights didn't appear overnight and celebrating how far we've come. It's about remembering that our queer elders put their blood, sweat, tears, and joy into this movement and carrying on what they started.
In light of the atrocities the Trump administration is committing right now, such as sending ICE, the Marines, and the National Guard into our communities, disappearing our neighbors and ripping families apart, we want to highlight the mass mobilization in support of marginalized communities right now across Pennsylvania. Folks are coming together to stop ICE raids, support our trans community members, and oppose the Trump administration's violence against our communities. It's up to us to take care of each other, stand up for each other, and demand better for ourselves and our communities. It's giving me hope to see how many Pennsylvanians are just doing that. I urge you to join us.
I'm beyond excited to introduce our new traditional comms organizer and my friend, Alec. Welcome to the News You Can Use podcast. Can you share a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with PA Stands Up?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Hannah. It's been a while since I've been on the podcast, so I'm very excited to be here. The story of how I found PA Stands Up is honestly like it feels like it was fate. And I know that sounds a little silly, but like I'll explain why it felt like fate. Like cut back to summer of 22, the decision by SCOTUS to overturn Roe v. Wade was leaked. And I literally remember reading it on my phone, like seeing that headline and just dropping to my knees and sobbing. I was so scared. As somebody who's transmasculine and gay, I was terrified at the like idea that my rights would be taken away. At prior to that, I had never really feared that I couldn't get an abortion if I needed one, and all of a sudden, it felt like the ground was just like ripped out from underneath my feet. So I was like, I should hold a rally. You know, my parents did some organizing when I was a child. I know what a protest looks like. I'm gonna try to put one together. So I did that, and my sister helped me. Some of my really good friends helped me, and I just so happened to plan it at the same time, same location, same date as another rally that was already happening with some groups, including NEPA Stands Up. They were doing a March for Our Lives against gun violence, which was incredible. They were really gracious and allowed me to share that space. I spoke really passionately. I cried because I cannot help but cry when I'm speaking passionately. And I got to meet Holly, who leads NEPA Stands Up as their organizer. And we immediately hit it off. I began canvassing with them for the End Solitary Confinement campaign. And I just realized, like, wow, I have been missing this like political home. I suddenly was surrounded by people who shared my values and believed in me and wanted to work for change. So like I was all in pretty much immediately. And it's been great since.
That's awesome, Alec. Thank you for sharing. So we're gonna dive into some questions, friend, and we're just gonna start this off because that was already magical, and I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to get into this. So, Alec, as you know, June is Pride Month, but I'm curious, like, what does Pride Month mean to you, friend?
I think for me, Pride Month means being in community with each other. That's the best part of it for me, is just being able to be surrounded by folks who I know understand what I've been through, who can hold me in both like joy and grief. So for me, Pride is about community, and that means being there when things are great and when things get really rough. Pride is rooted in protest. So that's something I like to remind people of and remind myself of, especially when things get scary, that I have the power to fight back and that I have a bunch of really amazing queer and trans siblings by my side, who are ready to fight.
Part you already know. I love that so much, Alec. And on that same topic, how has your queerness impacted your organizing, how you organize, your organizing philosophy, all of that?
I think it's impacted me in the sense that I try to pay really close attention to making sure that like different populations aren't left out of the conversation. Um, I've often felt like that, like being someone who is trans, who's part of the queer community, like sometimes the issues that affect me directly are kind of set off to the side. And so I try to be really intentional, not just when it comes to, you know, whether or not someone is queer, but like where did they grow up? You know, what is their background? What things impact them that maybe I wasn't thinking about? So I think that's really how my queerness impacts my organizing the most is I just try to be as intersectional as possible because I don't want anyone to feel left out and we need everybody to get in the same boat towards collective liberation. So we can't afford to make anybody feel like they're not welcome in our space.
Hell yeah. I'm like, all of our liberation is intertwined, and we need everybody's voice in this. So, like, thank you for sharing that. Alec, I'm wondering if you could tell us more about how NEPA's Queer Liberation Committee came to be and the work that you've done so far.
Yeah, so I was organizing with NEPA Stands Up for probably like almost a year before our committee came into fruition. Um, for me, I think it was mostly just realizing, wow, we have a lot of queer people in our chapter, but we're not really doing any organizing around queer issues, and that just felt wrong. Especially given, you know, the political context that we're in, where trans people have become such a target, queer youth have become such a target. It was just really important to me to create a space where queer and trans people felt safe and felt safe being political. So the first event that we did was actually something that was as apolitical as possible, because sometimes the news just bogs you down and you need to have fun and you need joy. So in 2023, we did a Trans Day of Visibility art and music celebration. We did it like so rogue. We were on the street, downtown Scranton. We had like 50 people show up. All of these amazing trans and non-binary artists and performers got their time to shine. And it was just gorgeous. It was a day that was full of joy, and joy is resistance. So from there, I was like, we need to keep doing this. Like, we need a whole committee to do this kind of work. So I, came up with a proposal and we did the damn thing. So since then, we have worked on a lot of different things. We did a follow-up TDOV celebration the following year in Wilkes-Barre, which was also incredible. It rained both times we did it, and we fought through the rain. We also did some trans liberation marches in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, and those are really incredible. I really got to see, trans folks feel more comfortable speaking for themselves and fighting for themselves. Because I know how scary it can be when you're such a tiny minority to like get out in the street and say, no, I actually deserve this. I deserve to feel safe in my community. I deserve to be respected. So that was amazing. And then from there, we got a bunch more people involved. So we started doing political education. We did a 5-part series on organizing for equity. A lot of that was geared towards allies to kind of give them that base of information that they need to start organizing with us and for us. And we also did a post-election grief cafe after November. Yeah, because like a big part of this for me is political organizing is emotional. And so we need to have spaces where we can talk through just how difficult what we're doing is, and really hold space for those parts of ourselves. And right now we are harassing Marty Flynn with a bunch of postcards, to let him know it's not cool to leave trans youth in the dust. And at the same time, we're working towards a non-discrimination ordinance in Lackawanna County. So I'm very excited about both of those campaigns, and very excited to have more people join us in those campaigns because we need all the voices we can get.
I love this. Thank you for sharing, Alec. The work that y'all have done in NEPA, I think, is really inspirational to all of our chapters and all of us statewide. And I love hearing how folks can get plugged in themselves. And you said a little bit about Trans Day of Visibility and what y'all did in 2023. I know that you showed up and showed out this year back in March as well. Can you tell us a bit about that experience, the bill package that we're advocating for with the PA Coalition for Trans Youth, and how folks can help get it passed?
Yeah, so I was so blessed to be connected pretty early on in the committee's formation to the PA Coalition for Trans Youth. They're a fantastic organization of concerned parents, concerned trans people, concerned trans youth, allies, just folks who really understand that trans youth are under attack and we need to fight back. We have been working really closely with them, and we joined them this past TDOV at the Capitol for a rally and lobby day. It's actually the third time we joined them, and it was bigger and better than ever. It was incredible. I really like, I can't even describe the feeling of being surrounded by bunch of trans people and allies with all that energy to just like keep fighting, even when things feel so dire, when it feels like we can't win, it feels like we're already knocked down and we're all out there just rallying, shouting, like the energy was so palpable in that room. It was really incredible. And the bill package that we were advocating for was originally called the Safe and Equal Schools Bill Package. So it was introduced last session the first time. Now those bills have been reintroduced. It's basically 4 bills that would fundamentally alter the way that trans and queer youth experience being in public school in Pennsylvania. Those bills would ensure that all public schools have a non-discrimination policy that covers gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation. Um, the other bill would create a comprehensive anti-bullying program and ensure that families and students are supported when they come out. A third bill would alter basically the way that bathrooms and locker rooms work in schools to ensure that trans and non-binary students can use the locker rooms and bathrooms that align with their gender. And it would also provide funds for those schools to put in third gender restrooms. And then the last bill, which I think would have probably had the biggest impact on me, to be quite honest, as a history nerd, is a bill that would ensure that there's inclusive curriculum so that students know that they have queer ancestors, queer elders, and so that they understand that LGBTQ people have always contributed to American history, to our culture, socioeconomically. So, like, really just everything was thought of. And the reason why this bill package is so comprehensive is because people in the community were directly consulted. We worked directly with legislators in co-governance to create these bills. So I'm very, very proud of them. And ways that you can support, contact your legislator, whether your state senators, your state reps, and let them know how necessary these bills are, and that you want them to vote for them.
Love annoying them. I was saying this earlier, like, make that your new favorite hobby, actually, because they work for you, so they need to listen to you. But we've talked about this a little bit separately, Alec, specifically advocating for queer youth and being here now as a queer elder of sorts in kind of like a mentorship role to them. I know, bold of me to say, but I wanted to ask, why do you think that is so important? And like, how is that healing for you and your community?
Think it's important to me because I know what it's like to be someone who's queer and a child and be ostracized for that, and also not understand what was going on in my own brain, or like that it was okay for me to just be myself. I'm really passionate in general about making sure that children are respected in our society. And so I'm particularly passionate when those children are also marginalized, whether it's because of their gender or their race. And honestly, it has been so healing, and I'm going to tear up talking about this. But there was one particular instance of a local business owner, Seed Bomb, they're incredible, and they let me know just how important our organizing has been for their own family, and in supporting their own child. And that's what this is all about for me, is making sure that queer youth are seen, are heard, are loved, are affirmed, and just, yeah, just making sure that we all belong. Like, it sounds so simple, like it really is that simple, but yeah, it's just incredible to know that people have been directly impacted by the work that we do, because they deserve to have all of the opportunities that I didn't when I was a kid.
I love that so much, Alec. And I'm always thinking about how can we leave this earth better than what we found it? And I'm always in awe whenever I speak with you. So like thank you so much for being here. Um so before I start tearing up and stuff too, because I was also at the Trans Day of Visibility this past year and it was beautiful. I'm like, all right, we're gonna keep trucking along. Um as a fellow history nerd, I'm wondering, are there memorable political wins for the queer community that have left a lasting impact on you? Because I know for me, it was like the overturning of like "Don't Ask, Don't Tell." That was such a big thing for me, especially coming from a military family, and my partner at the time was in the military when that was overruled, and I was like, oh, maybe it is possible for us to like get married and have a family, and it just opened up a whole new world. So I'm wondering if you could share some like history or like political wins that really got your queer little heart singing, being like, yeah, we did that shit.
Yeah, I think for me, it was marriage equality in 2015. That SCOTUS ruling, I remember being in Florida on vacation, in our little hotel room at a Universal Studios with my family. I had just graduated from high school and had like just gotten to a point where I was feeling more confident and comfortable in my own queerness. And I remember it being really, really early, and I was like, oh, I hear the TV. Like, oh, why does my dad already have the news on? And then I'm like crusty-eyed, like opening my eyes up, and I'm hearing marriage equality is the law of the land, like, and that I think for me just really, really set in stone that like we can do this, like we can move forward. All the crap that I felt when I was a kid, like we can move past that now. So that was really important for me and just like giving me the hope that there is a future for me and for all of my loved ones who are also queer and trans.
I feel that, especially as a fellow Gen Z who was like a teenager when that happened, and how quickly the culture shifted and like it became so normal that like definitely our generation, but like Gen Alpha as well, like we think it's weird if you are against queer marriage in any way. Like that's weird. You're a weirdo for that. Um, and obviously that took not only like our queer elders, but also our allies, our co conspirators, and their hard work in the legal field. And I know that we have a lot of listeners who aren't queer but want to support our community. Do you think that allyship is enough in this political moment?
So I have a controversial take perhaps, but something that we've been working on in NEPA is moving beyond allyship into becoming an accomplice or a co-conspirator. And what we mean by that is, going beyond things that are performative, like, oh, I just shared this thing on social media or something small like that. We really need people to be willing to take on bigger tasks, like being out in the street, going with us when we need to change our ID at the DMV, which can be a very uncomfortable experience. I mean, there are really so many ways where we can be more considerate. And so I've been trying to encourage people to go beyond just sharing stuff on social media or showing up to a protest here and there, but you know, talk to your family members, have those difficult conversations, do the emotional labor that's necessary to decolonize your own mind, right? Like so much gunk is stuck in all of our brains simply because we were raised in a system that didn't appreciate and value everyone. And that's really hard stuff to deal with. That's probably, I think, the hardest step for people to take from going like from an ally to an accomplice is being willing to reflect on how maybe you haven't shown up the best in the past and how you can do better. So yeah, we have those kinds of conversations a lot in NEPA, not just about gender, but about how we can be accomplices when it comes to racial justice, when it comes to disability justice. All of these things are really intertwined for me.
Like, yes. We need more co-conspirators. Like, we need more people who are ready to be in the streets with us, who are ready to throw down. And I'm so happy that you said that. Um, my next question for you, Alec, is: are there any queer movement leaders, quotes, or historical events that inspire your organizing? And if so, how do they impact your organizing philosophy?
Yeah, so I have two examples of people who have really, I think, impacted the way that I organize. One is Emilio Robles, who was a Zapatista colonel. He fought for the Mexican Revolution and he was transgender. As somebody who is part of the Mexican diaspora, he is just especially inspiring because this man existed 100 years ago and was fighting for revolution. He was fighting for colonial power to get the hell out of his home. And I just think
Yes.
it's so freaking powerful. Um, for me and for other people to know that like trans people have always been here. We have been here at every pinnacle moment of history. You just don't know about it because our history gets erased. So he's a really important figure for me, both in wanting to, deconstruct and get rid of this cis heteropatriarchy, but also decolonize. But the second person, and me and Hannah have talked and gushed about her, is Sylvia Rivera. Also someone who is Latino, incredible trans woman who just really got, I think, I think Sylvia Rivera really helps us understand all of the intersections, probably better than any figure I can really think of, other than Marsha P. Johnson, whom she worked with really closely. Um, they were concerned about the queer people who were houseless, who were poor, who had to resort to sex work to survive. And so I think I think about her all the time, and just making sure that like when we're doing our queer organizing, we're centering people who are marginalized even within our own community. Because when we focus on meeting the needs of the most marginalized, we meet everybody.
That's exactly it. That's why we keep coming back to the intersectionality. Like, my liberation is bound up with yours, and yours is bound up with Edwin's. Like, and when we meet everybody's needs, everybody is better off for it. Um, Also, just wanted to ask a little shameless plug here. What does NEPA's Queer Liberation Committee have planned for the future? What's going on? Any fun events? It is Pride Month.
Yeah, so we're gonna be at all the Pride things. We're gonna be tabling a lot this month. So we'll be at the Big Gay Story Slam by Scranton Fringe Fest, an absolutely incredible organization that uplifts the creativity of queer folks. We're also gonna be at Pride Fest in Wilkes-Barre, which is just continuing to be bigger and better every single year. So you should definitely catch us there. We want you to sign those postcards. If you're a constituent of Marty Flynn, if you're in Lackawanna or Luzerne County, and you're pissed off that he voted for SB9, um, let him know. Join our postcard campaign. We're also going to be at the Bog on the 28th, in Scranton for a Pride event. Going to be super, super cool. And we're going to be postcarding there too. So you should catch us at one of these events for sure. And you should also sign up to canvas with us. We're going to be deep canvassing for non-discrimination in Lackawanna County. Some people might not know, but our non-discrimination policy in Pennsylvania is super patchy. And currently in Lackawanna County, Scranton and Dixon City have non-discrimination policies that cover trans and queer folks. But if you're rural, if you're outside of those two cities, then you're not covered. And that's not okay. We think that's a bunch of BS. So if you also think that's a bunch of BS, you could definitely canvas with us on July 19th.
No, I definitely believe that's a bunch of BS, and I'm looking forward to like getting out there, signing some postcards, and just spreading the word. But we've come to our last question, friends. I wish we had a little bit more time, but this is the last one, and I'm gonna have all three of us answer if that's okay. But the last question I have is, what's bringing you queer joy right now? And Alec, let's start with you.
So recently, I've really gotten back into poetry. I used to write a lot when I was a kid and young adult, and then I kind of got cut off from that creativity. I think in large part just due to the political environment. I was so stressed out. It was like I couldn't access like who I really am for a second. So I have been reconnecting with that creative part of myself, writing poetry about my experience as someone who is queer and Mexican. And that has been lovely. I shared for the first time at an open mic recently, and the reaction was just so, so incredible. So I'm really excited to say I'm going to be doing it again. I'm going to be reading poetry again for people this Saturday. And then now I'm going to be part of this really cool production all about like understanding and deepening our allyship in September. So I'm jazzed. As a former theater kid, as someone who is always really creative, I'm jazzed to be getting back into that. So that is my queer.
Like, we'd love to see it. I'm also super jazzed for all the queer things. Hannah, same question for you. What's bringing you queer joy right now, friend?
So much. This, and I'm like, ugh, don't cry on the podcast, but if I do, y'all didn't see a damn thing. This is my first Pride Month out for like the entire month. I came out at the end of Pride Month last year. Um, and so getting to be in community with folks here in Philly and really feel like I belong because I do. Um, has been bringing me a lot of queer joy, getting to do art with my queer friends. Like, I love painting. I love a painting moment and a journaling moment outside. And just despite like everything going on and having these amazing organizing spaces with folks like you two, getting to have those moments of calm and those moments of pure joy and like fully shedding my mask and like getting to be who I really am is bringing me a lot of joy right now. What about you, Eddie?
Now you got me sniffling and nodding up here on the podcast. Oh, both of you. Ooh. Sorry. I'm just like dysregulated. Get back to topic, but there's been a lot of queer joy for me this year. I am a part of Amazing Pride Center that I've been putting together with my friends, and we recently just had our second annual Pride Festival, and we had about 800 people come through, which was like super, super cool and scary at the same time. But a lot of folks in my area have been saying this has been much needed for such a long time, and they're really happy that this is happening. So that's bringing me queer joy right now of just being able to be in community with people who live in my community. And I don't know, we're just being super gay as fuck this month and just showing up places and watching movies and just trying to find the joy amongst all this chaos. I know sometimes it feels like we're drinking from the federal fire hose at all times, but sometimes it's nice to just close that tap, be able to sit with your friends and be like, regardless of what happens, I know that we have each other's back and that we're going to be able to continue fighting because we're not just going to give up. We're not just going to disappear. Queer folks have always been here, as Alec has said, throughout history, and we're not going anywhere. So that's what's bringing me queer joy, bringing me solace, and I'm so happy to be in community with both of you and each of you listening here today. So I think we're going to wrap it up here, friends. Thank you, Alec, for being on the podcast with us today, and we'll be talking to y'all later. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Eddie.
See ya. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. If you enjoyed our show, please follow us and share with your friends and your enemies. And be sure to come back next month to hear about all things Pennsylvania, people, power, and politics. Until then, I'm Edwin, your host, and don't forget, Pennsylvania is for all of us. We'll see you in the streets.
This episode of News You Can Use was produced by PA Stands Up member Liz Levins, Director of Narrative Strategy Edwin Stubbs, and Digital Organizer Hannah Henrishon. If you have any questions or topic suggestions, please email us at comms@pastandsup.org.